Hello, this is Dr. Nancy O'Reilly, and I would like to welcome you to Smart Amazing Conversations with Dr. Nancy, a podcast that takes a look at stories of life and leadership for smart, amazing women and men like you.
The most important thing is showing up. Don't think that you have to bring anything. Bring yourself, show up, and remain steadfast and be a...
If you are in a position of leadership and a position of management, bring women along with you.
Supporting women is my passion and my purpose. And talking with other women and men who promote women's leadership is one of my favorite things to do.
I've yet to meet a woman who did not know what she really wanted. She was just either afraid to ask the questions or she was afraid of what the answers meant.
Their stories connect us and help us to understand that the possibilities are endless if we support each other and lift other women up.
Trust is created by persistent identity. I show up as myself time and time and time again, and trust is built. It's one conversation at a time.
Hello, I'm Dr. Nancy O'Reilly, and I'm happy to welcome Michelle Lee to Smart Amazing Conversations with Dr. Nancy. Michelle Lee is an award-winning veteran journalist and philanthropic person who currently is working as a news anchor in St. Louis, Missouri. Michelle co-launched the Very Asian Global Movement of Unity with her friend and fellow journalist, is it Gia Yang?
Vang, Gia Vang. Mm-hmm.
Gia Vang. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Gia Vang. And after receiving a racist voicemail to response to sharing online the Korean food she ate to celebrate New Year's in January 2022, her response caught the attention of The Ellen Show. Ellen's gift of $15,000 helped start the seed money to create a social profit organization focused on shining the light on Asian life through advocacy and celebration. As a result, the Very Asian Foundation raised tens of thousands of dollars, and now the social profit is in its first 100 days. And it has launched a national awareness campaign called the May Book Project to help schools and libraries build and maintain robust Asian American youth literature collections for all readers. Because she is a Korean adoptee, Michelle spent many years supporting other adoptees through heritage camps and volunteer tours to Korea. She has launched a program to support Missouri children to foster care. This work has led to congressional award. In 2010, Michelle's reporting has been honored with the National Peabody Award, 4 national Murrows, and multiple regional Emmys, often for covering topics related to race or gender inequities. She has appeared on CNN, NBC, CBS, ABC, and the Washington Post. And she is releasing a children's book with Glue. Is it Glue? I'm not good at pronouncing it.
Glue, yeah. Gloo, yeah.
GLO books this fall called A Very Asian Guide to Korean Food, the first in a series of books to introduce young readers and adults to the delicious world of Korean food. So I'm very pleased to have Michelle Lee. Thank you for being with me. I can't wait to talk about this topic. And I love Korean food, by the way.
Oh, you do? Oh, great.
Absolutely. Springfield, Missouri, and you've been in the Southwest. Springfield, Missouri has some great Korean restaurants.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a favorite one?
And I'm not gonna be able to say that right now, but no, I do have. I'm in and out of Springfield quite a bit. I'm living in California now, but there are some good Korean restaurants in Springfield, Missouri. So go there and try the food. But this is an interesting topic because, and my background is in gender equity and inequities as well. So diversity and inclusion is a huge piece of what Women Connect for Good is all about. And so when we heard about your situation, and of course this new foundation, we had to jump right on board. We had to get on board. But let's talk about your personal story, because your background, of course, and being an adopted Korean, and this is very valuable in itself. Well, let me say one thing first, because I just did a video before I started with your conversation today. It's about, we are all immigrants in this country. And we forget that in the United States, that every one of us is an immigrant. Probably the only true Americans, if you want to call them Americans, were the Indians. Mm-hmm. And even they migrated from other parts of the world. So we are all immigrants. And I think sometimes we forget that. So I just want to bring that up real quickly. I'm an immigrant. You're an immigrant. We've all come from other places. So I've got Irish blood, Scottish blood, and I've got probably a little Indian blood in me too. So, all right, let's hear your story. How'd you get to be who you are today?
Well, I was born in Korea, so I am documented immigrant and came here when I was about 6 months old and moved as an adoptee to Missouri, and that's where I grew up. So grew up in a pretty rural area in Missouri, just outside of Kansas City. And then ended up going to the University of Kansas, getting my first news job in North Carolina, and spent 8 years in Springfield, Missouri. So I know it really well. And then went back to North Carolina, moved to Madison, Wisconsin, spent some time in Seattle, Washington, and that's where I had my son. And then my family moved back to Missouri during the pandemic, and now we live in St. Louis.
Okay. Well, this is an interesting, here you're doing a broadcast on January, the 1st of January, talking about different foods. Actually, I listened to the broadcast and listened to your broadcast, and I didn't even know about foods like that. So I was kind of like, pork. I didn't know pork meant,
Yeah, right.
but anyway, talk about really how this began, because this is really one of those things that something good came from something not so good.
Sure. So I was working on New Year's Day, and we just did one of those stories that, I would call a throwaway story. My news director probably wouldn't want me to call it a throwaway story, but, it was like 20 seconds of, hey, this is what Americans eat on New Year's Day. And it was pork for progress, greens for wealth, I think cornbread for coins. And it was just interesting because I was actually thinking, like, where did this come from? Like, where did this story come from? Americans eat what? And also because growing up in Missouri as an American kid, I didn't eat that stuff on New Year's Day. Like, we just didn't have any New Year's traditions. Now, when I lived in North Carolina, that's when I actually, so when I was like 21, or 22, moved to North Carolina, we had Hoppin' John's and, collards and pulled pork and all those things for New Year's Day. But that was not the tradition I grew up with. So anyway, I actually, that morning I had been looking through my Instagram feed and just saw like all my friends, celebrating New Year's or New Year's Eve, the night before. And so many of my friends who are like in Missouri and are Korean were eating, tteokguk, which is rice cake soup. And so a lot of people put mandu in it, or pot stickers, or dumplings. And so, and that's how I eat mine too. So I had some dumpling, rice cake soup for New Year's Day. And I just thought, like, you know what? I think I'm just going to add a line that said like, oh, just, hey, can I ad lib for a second? And my producer said yes. And I usually don't even ask to ad lib, but I just didn't want her to advance to the next story because it was kind of a serious story, I think. So I said, hey, can I just ad lib for a second? And my producer said, sure. So I said, hey, at the end of that story, I said, I had dumpling soup because that's what a lot of Korean people do. Sure. That was it. It was just one sentence, I'm ad-libbing with myself because there's nobody there, because it's the skeleton crew on New Year's Day. And it was interesting because the whole story was like 20 seconds long. And I had a couple of really nice comments, which I thought was unique, I guess, because I was like, who's watching on New Year's Day and who takes the time to be touched by a 20-second story? But like one guy, and specifically remember, he said, hey, thanks for mentioning that soup because my wife grew up in Korea, and our daughter is making that soup for the first time. So I thought, oh, that's so cool. It became like this really inclusive moment for nothing, for a nothing story. And then I got a voicemail like a couple hours later, or that came through a couple hours later.
Well, some of the things that they said were really very, very, they were abusive. They were really uncalled for. What was it? Being Asian thinking, keep her Korean to herself. I mean, I don't understand people. I really, when you hear this kind of thing, it really does need to be called out, because we just can't have that kind of behavior for any of us, and again, my last book is called We're in This Together, and we really are. So I think and diversity and inclusion, we are all diverse, and so we have to figure out ways to be inclusive as well. So this to me is so important, is that we keep talking about, if really, when you talk about inequity, you really talk about the lack of diversity and the lack of inclusion. And so this is key. So, all right, now this is what positive has come from. Something good has come from something that was not so good, which is, that's the most important part of this conversation, is that you then developed the Very Asian Foundation, which I think is so appropriate. I have certain, my Scottish background and my Irish background, there are certain things that you can go, and these are what these people did, and I'm, and so forth. But again, we don't really understand that much about each other, and we don't take the time to really ask about each other. So the Very Asian Foundation, what is the guiding principle and the mission of this foundation?
Well, the Very Asian Foundation, like you kind of mentioned in the beginning, shines a light on Asian experiences through advocacy and celebration. So it really just stemmed from that moment. That woman, when she called, the voicemail was really offensive. It said, she said, "I'm just offended that Michelle was talking about what white what did she say? She said, "I'm just kind of offended because you need to talk about what white people eat on New Year's Day, because if white people talked about what white people eat, they would be fired. And I'm just kind of annoyed because Michelle's being very Asian and she needs to keep her Korean to herself and talk about what white people eat." Yeah. And so, so Very Asian itself became trending globally. It was crazy. Like, I just shared myself listening to the voicemail, and then it went crazy viral. And so people started using the hashtag Very Asian to share like their family pictures, their cultural traditions, their multicultural traditions and backgrounds. And I had people who said, like, as an adoptee, I've never seen another adoptee get to lead an Asian conversation. So this is amazing. Or, I never felt like I could be a part of a discussion because I'm only half Asian or quarter Japanese or something like that. And I always say, especially because I'm raising a son of mixed race, I always, really want to change the conversation. And maybe I'm not the person to do it, but because people can call themselves whatever they want, but like, I really don't like describing my child in fractions. And all the work that I've done just in trying to be a better parent is, when you look at children who are of mixed race, sometimes they'll say, well, I only felt like I could be half this and half that, and I wanted to be a full person. And so I really say, like, we have variations of being very Asian, and we have this experience as being, Asian in America and Asian American. So, anyway, so when we went viral, we raised money for the Asian American Journalists Association, which really keeps tabs on a lot of bad headlines, fights for equity in newsrooms, really impacts like everyone who reads journalism, who consumes journalism. Mm. And so when we formed the foundation, we formed the Very Asian Foundation with the intent to shine a light on Asian experiences, because shining a light is what journalism, is all about. And then we kept it to Asian experiences because we had people all around the world, like from Germany, Holland, China, like Korea, Australia, Canada. I mean, seriously, people who bought like these very Asian shirts that we made. So we wanted to keep it as Asian experiences, not Asian American, because we could be Asian Canadian, Asian, Australian. And through advocacy, obviously, just to advocate for our full humanity, but celebration, because we believe that we have a right to celebrate who we are. And because so many people for a moment in time were celebrating being very Asian, that it was like celebration has to be a part of our mission too. So, it's like highlighting stories, highlighting experiences, and then also finding good and being positive, because the last 2.5 years or so have really been hard for people in the Asian American community. I think a lot of rhetoric was harmful. And we saw, in the pandemic, people using harmful language. We've seen attacks on Asian American communities. And so we really felt like, for 2.5 years, people have used, hashtags in defense of us, like, please stop hurting us, stop AAPI hate, stop Asian hate. Yeah. And for one moment in time, we said, hey, we're happy and, celebrating being very Asian. So we always want to have celebration in our messaging.
Yeah. Well, where do you think where do you think it comes from? I know, I think about people when they attack someone else, it's usually because they're hurting themselves.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Threatened, or they feel uncomfortable. I'm a psychologist. So, typically when we attack someone else, we feel threatened, or we feel devalued, or we feel, in some ways that something's going to be taken from us. So where do you think it came from that people were, again, attacking the Asian community?
Well, I think, a lot of it had to do with where the origin or believed origin of coronavirus started, and the political rhetoric was really terrible, and, I always try to avoid politics as a journalist in the sense of like what I'm saying. But, it is harmful to use words like China virus and Kung flu, and to give people permission to just walk up to people and say things that people said to people. I mean, I've interviewed so many children who've said adults would stop them in the grocery store and say, you're the reason that we've got China virus, and I believe these kids, and even in Texas, there was a young person, a family, but like kid, who was stabbed in the face with a knife because someone said, you're the reason we have coronavirus. So, I feel like people were really emboldened and angry at Asian people and it was unfair and harmful. I think people think, they're just words, but we know that words matter, and we know that some people go beyond rhetoric and take things into action, and it's scary. It's really scary.
Wow. No, for me, COVID, with the whole virus, really came down to one thing and one thing else: relationships.
Yeah.
The important people in my life that I wanted to continue to have a relationship with. But yeah, there was the pandemic, people called it the plandemic. I mean, there's been so much confusion being in the media. Of course, one of the things I always say, don't believe everything you see, hear, or read. Mm-hmm. And so this is important, again, for you to have this foundation and to clarify and to put information out there that is positive, that really does make a difference. So what kinds of things have happened in the positive realm that the foundation was created?
Well, we created the May Book Project in May, and really because May is Asian American Heritage Month. And so Asian American Pacific Islander, Native Hawaiian, Heritage Month. And, we really want to celebrate who we are. And so we launched the May Book Project as a response, I think a very journalistic response, because there was a problem that came to our attention in January when we went viral. And so basically some St. Louis students, they are in a civics group together. They go to various different high schools. And in 2021, they actually went to their schools and they created an Asian American Pacific Islander, or what they called an AAPI book list. And they gave it to about 10 schools. And during the month of May, so like our Heritage Month, right? Okay. And they said, we would really love it if you would participate and, buy some new books for our libraries. And out of all of those schools, about 10 were contacted, and none of them responded. So the students, when I went viral, we were holding a student panel, and it was St. Louis students, some students from California, Dear Asian American Youth, and then Make Us Visible New Jersey. So we had coast to coast in the Midwest, and these students were talking about this book list that they had created in Missouri. And then there was an overall discussion on how many young people felt invisible in their schools and how that made them feel, with the dual existence of being hyper visible in their communities. So what I just said, being able to walk out into the grocery store and have an adult say, "You're the reason coronavirus is here." How damaging that is to be unseen in the spot that you should be seen. Students should be seen at schools.
Yeah.
And then not being able to go out to your neighborhood grocery store. And some of these students had some very scary experiences, people getting in their face and stuff in the public. And so then we started talking about mental health and what that was doing to their mental health. And we had some side chats going, and some students confided in us that they or their friends had created suicide plans during the pandemic. And fast forward, I think it was May or June, the CDC came out and said, well, now suicide is the number one cause of death in Asian American youth, and it is the only category that's the number one cause of death. So we know how hard it's been on Asian American youth. And I also feel like if a young person is telling you something, or any person is telling you something, you got to listen. If someone is brave enough at 16 or 17 to tell you that they or their friends have made suicide plans, you got to listen to them. So I said, this is a long story into the book project, but I said,
this is what's coming from, right?
Well, I said, we can't help you necessarily with, I don't know anything about mental health resources for young people, but we can certainly look at that. But I think the most immediate thing that we can do is get a book list in schools. My goodness. So they gave me their book list, and then I realized, well, I'm not an expert. So I went to a national scholar, so a PhD, a woman who's got a PhD in children's literature and other things. And so she convened 6 or 7 other scholars around the country, and they built this book list that's about 200 plus books long, from early readers to adult crossover. And they also convened other groups like We Need Diverse Books, the Asian Pacific American Librarians Association, the Asian Authors Alliance. And not only did they create this really high quality vetted book list, they also created a rubric so that librarians have an academic approach to building diverse libraries and getting certain things out of the mix. You want to make sure that your Asian collection is not just folklore, because people need to see themselves in, beyond a mythical sense. Yeah. And so much of Asian, collections are folklore or festivals or food or fashion, so they're 5 Fs, I think. And so, we just want protagonists who happen to be Asian. And on top of that, even illustrations with slanted eyes, those are outdated. So they're time to get those out. And, our scholars made some really tough decisions in terms of of their picks. And I think that's great, because from a journalistic perspective too, that means that they weren't, they couldn't be persuaded by publishers or whoever. Yeah. And so they created this list. And then, we were really proud that in Missouri, when we pitched the list and we put it out in May, that we had support from the Missouri State Librarian, who then said that they would pass it out to all the library districts in Missouri. And, it's a tough time to be a librarian. It's a tough time to be an educator, because there are book bans, and because, there's a lot of discussion around diversity and critical race theory, which this is not, by the way. This is just access to Asian American youth literature. Right. But you know, like we were really careful about how we were curating this list. And so we're really proud to say that it is a vetted list. It is a high quality list, and it gives people choice. You know, if you've got 50 books on a list, you know, on one particular list, and we're not asking you to buy all 50, but we would certainly love it if you did. But, you know, to have buy-in so that people can see themselves in schools and also learn about other people as well. I think that's really important when we talk about literature and education.
Yeah. Well, we want to be around like-minded people. That's just
right.
Very simple. So the suicide in the Asian teenage population, have you seen any, again, of course, if you can report changes and ways that it's been more positive in that area, have you seen some things that have changed and something that you can report and say, this is what has happened since we've started this book project. This is what has happened since we've started this
Sure.
Asian Foundation, because I think those are the things that we really need to let the public know that, yeah, you're making an impact. But again, I think that the thing that's also really positive is that it really does touch other populations and other diverse populations as well, as far as the need to do exactly what you're doing, which is creating, ways to celebrate yourself and to have pride. So have you seen changes that you could, because accountability and reporting is so important.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, these are all conversational things because we just launched, you know, in May, and here we are in September. In terms of like getting schools involved, I mean, the schools who don't even have Asian American leaders are like, oh my gosh, we love this. Thank you. Because a lot of times, basically we've just offered a free resource to schools or to community libraries. So I think people are grateful for that. In terms of students, the students that we've talked to, I think they feel really empowered and emboldened to just be proud of who they are, just to be able to say like, thank you for seeing us. Thank you for giving us more confidence to us to see ourselves. And so we have like May Book Project ambassadors, student ambassadors who are going to their schools and saying, we would really like you to consider buying some books, or we've got some students who are doing book drives right now. So I feel really proud of that. And, we have like some corporate sponsors who are saying, we believe in this work. We have a really big corporate sponsor in Asutra, which is a self-care brand owned by a woman named Stephanie Morimoto, as well as Venus Williams. And so everyone knows Venus, right? And so I love this because it's intersectionality, strong women, people who believe in self-care. And they've given us a really wonderful donation that will seriously bring in tens of thousands of books to schools across the country. And so, it's just this idea of like, trailblazers in literature say, Rudine Sims Bishop, for example, says, okay, you've got to be able to see yourself and see others.
Yeah, I'm joining the board of the National Women's History Museum. And one of the things of so important is storytelling.
Yeah.
And the stories that we can learn about people that are in our histories. Hidden Figures is a very good example of women that we finally learned in history, which basically we may not even had a space program or even computers if it wasn't for these wonderful women of color,
right?
Who basically ran the space program for NASA. So again, I think this is the opportunity, especially for the Asian community, is there's the storytelling. And talking about the celebration and the things that the people who have made a difference. And you're going to be one of those storytellers. You're going to be one of those important people. So, Michelle, congratulations. I'm so happy this happened to you, because good things have come from something that's not so good. So,
oh my goodness, thank you.
How can we learn more about you, your foundation? And of course, Women Connect for Good, what we do is we collaborate. We're a connector and we're a collaborator. That's what we do. And we lift women up.
I love it.
We lift people up. If we lift one person at a time, we lift ourselves as well. So you've been lifting lots and lots of people, and I congratulate you there. And we would love for you to join our campaign. But
yes, absolutely.
That we can collaborate and connect with your foundation. We want to help. So where do they go? And of course, money is always welcome by every foundation.
Yeah, it is. We will take your money.
I have a couple of those myself. So money is we need operational dollars, but again, the media is so important, and we need good news out there. We need good news. So this is great news. So where do we find you and more about the foundation?
Thank you for asking, and thank you so much for the connection. We would love to be connected to you, obviously. VariationFoundation.org is where you can find us. And I would say in general, we are most active, it seems like, on Instagram. If you're on that social media platform.
Yeah, that seems to be the place to go. Facebook is not quite as active, but Instagram is definitely where we get a lot of comments and questions and also interest. So
yeah, we're on TikTok too, but I mean, it's not as we're not as hip for the TikTok, I don't think.
Well, you're not yet. Let's put it that way. You're not yet. My guess is that you're going to be on every media platform and be extremely successful. So congratulations. And like I said, when I speak with someone, have a conversation, it's just not a one-time thing. It's a way to connect and a way to continue the good works and to make this world a better place because of things like what you're doing and the kind of person you are. So Thank you for being you. I bet your son is so proud of his mother and his mommy. And, I think it's absolutely wonderful. So I'm going to say goodbye for now, but let's stay in touch. And if there's ways that we can continue to help you, reach out and we'll find some other ways. I'll have Michelle, my team leader, contact you in ways that we can help you as well, because that's important, ways that we can help.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Nancy. Really appreciate your time and just this opportunity.
Well, have a great one. And yes, we will be in touch. So thanks again and congratulations.
Thank you.
Have a good one. Thank you. Bye-bye. If you enjoy these smart, amazing conversations, please subscribe, rate, and review them on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And read and enjoy more amazing stories in my books, In This Together, How Successful Women Support Each Other in Work and Life, and Leading Women, 20 influential women share their secrets to leadership, business, and life. Thank you for listening.